Well, welcome to another session. I I hope you are well, and as always, am I pleased to have you? Yes. Um, I'd like to talk about the pathway to success for men with regards to relationships. Um, for those of you who may have participated or have seen the conversations that I had, which were directed towards women, about the importance of beginning with the end in mind, I like to take that concept and apply the functional equivalent for men. In other words, hold up to men the same standard with with a slight caveat, which is on the basis that with regards to men, forgive me, let me just turn this off, which is with regards to men, we have a much higher burden of performance compared to women. Now, beginning with the end in mind is a concept that many understand. In several ways, we've seen that whenever people create something that is long lasting, something that is revered, something that stands the test of time, something that is admired, the idea that conceives whatever service or product or experience is not one that comes about by happenstance. It's carefully thought through. The person thinks about what the finished product may be, or should be, or could be. And with that idea, that picture, they work backwards and try to bring to reality the concept that they had in their mind. In other words, they try to merge their imagination and the reality. Now, think about a painting. You never buy an original painting, ever. Now, I don't care what paintings you have. I have a few, and I don't really care who painted the art piece. It is impossible to buy an original painting. The reason being that the original painting, the original piece of art, the original design is in the mind of the maker, is in the mind of the person who created the work. What you get is the original copy of his first or her first print. The idea is always in the mind, in the imagination. And what they try to do is take that idea and bring it into reality. And what you tend to find, that process works if you begin with the end in mind. Success for men, especially success in relationships, follows this similar path. There are only a few principles for success, generally speaking, and those principles apply irrespective of the deviation or the derivative of success that we are talking about. Success in your professional life, success in happiness, success in relation to wealth, success in relation to health, success in relation to well-being. There are only a few principles that guarantee success. You do not need so many ideas. You need just the few basic principles. Beginning with the end in mind is one of the ultimate principles to start with. And here's the reason. In relationships, and for those of you perhaps who heard me discuss such matters with women, I began with a few questions. I said, it's hard to know what that end would look like. The younger you are, the less clear and the less clarity you have about that potential future. The older you are, the more clarity you have. That just comes with time, age, and experience. So if I set a woman down, a woman who is 21, and I said to her, what do you want? What does success look like relationally? There is a possibility that she may not have enough clarity as a woman who is 37. the difference between both is roughly 16 years. The woman who is 37 has lived and therefore has had the opportunity to have come to an understanding of what she likes and who she is, and really she's come to an awareness of the difference between her wants and her needs, and therefore she's more able to articulate with clarity what she wants. A younger girl may be unaware and therefore will like to try different things. Now, men are no different. If I sat a young man down who is 21 and I asked him, what would success relationally look like? There's a possibility he might talk about all of the women he might bed, the various shapes they might come in, the locations, how exotic they might be. There's a possibility he might talk about things that perhaps are short term rather than long term. A 37-year-old man would have had 16 years of experience ahead of that same person, and therefore might be slightly more astute, aware, shrewd, careful, thoughtful, and therefore apply better judgment in what they want. Neither of the two men, should I say, is necessarily wrong, because both have the power of choice and the free will. You get to choose. What we try to do, and what I try to do in these sessions, is to say, on the balance of probabilities, what is likely going to be the better choice? Some choices come with unintended consequences that are too great compared to the price paid and the benefit received. Some others are less. What this session is about is trying to guide you, especially the younger you are, about things you should consider. And here is the key part of the conversation. The younger you are, the more likely that you do not understand the potential and the value, the gifts, the talents, the abilities that you have inherent within you. You're more likely to blow up your future. Think about this if you've been around teenagers. Every day, every teenager wakes up with so much enthusiasm, so much exuberance, so much passion, but also so much ignorance and stupidity that it almost feels sometimes that they have a motto which says, I'm going to do everything possible to sabotage my future self. They make decisions that are almost guaranteed to sabotage their future success. Some of them are unlucky in that choice, and therefore they do not sabotage their future success. Some are lucky in their choice, and they certainly sabotage their future success. Now, this is partly why, if you were to plot all the men in the United Kingdom into a probability distribution, what you find is about, as of 2023, approximately perhaps 60 to 75% of people fall within what we call the normal distribution. About 4% or less fall within what we call the tails, the exceptional class and group. And roughly about 10% to about 12-15% fall within those who are performing very, very poorly and who've squandered their future. Therefore, to get into the top group, which is my intention, by the way, to get you into the top 5%, your performance and your decision-making process has to be so wise, thoughtful. It has to be made with good judgment and understanding, discernment, because there's something great about you. And to squander all those great traits and gifts for a short-term experience is crazy. So let's go back to the first statement I made. Begin with the end in mind. That's a vague statement. And you might be thinking, what does that mean? Okay, let me help. Relationally, if you can remember this concept, it would make your experience with regards to women and dating a lot more pleasurable. Each party, a man and a woman, play several roles. We have several functions, but we want to cohabit. We want to unite and be in union with someone we choose, and someone who's chosen us, and someone we love, and someone who loves us back. In our respective positions as individuals, we are gatekeepers. One party plays a more powerful role, something I call the balance of power. One party controls at a certain time and commands, therefore, a more important role and function than the other. A woman is a gatekeeper to her body, but first of all, she's a gatekeeper to her emotions. Secondly, her body, and thirdly, her womb, the ability to reproduce. Now, things have gone awry in the West. That sequence was always emotions, body, reproduction, and your womb. For whatever reason, we have the inverse. We have people having children before they get married. We also have people having sex and giving their bodies to other people before they give their hearts and their emotions. In any case, that sequence applies. A woman is a gatekeeper to her emotions, to her body, and to her womb. She chooses the man, therefore, she selects the man she allows into her space, or whoever she gifts that honor of her emotions, body, or womb. So men are recipients. We receive what is given to us. The younger the woman is, the more that power lies in her hand. The older she gets, the less that power lies in her hand. Fascinating. Not because she ever loses the power to choose, but because men are not queuing up to be chosen. So the younger the woman is, the more she will have people who say, I want your emotions, I want your body, and I want your womb. A woman who is 21 will have a much higher number of people lining up to be chosen than a woman who is 45. That's just nature. Now, on the other hand, men apply different and are elected to be gatekeepers to something different. Men are gatekeepers to relationships and marriage. We get to choose, all things remaining equal, we get to choose who we decide we want to pair bond with and who we decide we will be responsible to and for the rest of our lives. It's a different level of responsibility. We bestow that process by the act of getting on one knees and asking for a hand in marriage. So we give our last names to a woman and she has to accept. So women are recipients in that regard. Now, if you understand this concept, what I am about to explain about beginning with the end in mind becomes very easy. It means that in terms of what men can control and what we cannot control, that there's a huge distinction. We do not control the first group, which is body, emotions, womb. That's a woman's choice. We just receive. We do control who we give our last names to and who we marry and who we pair bond with for life. That's a more important role. By beginning with the end in mind, the question is as follows, and the questions that should be posed are as follows. Number one, if you could describe the woman that you want to give your last name to, or you want to get married to, or one you want to be in a common partnership with, or in common agreement with, or someone who you want to be obligated to, legally and otherwise, what would she look like? One of the ways to help guide you in that process is how men choose women. 4 criteria: your SMV, your sexual marketplace value, your RFV, reproductive fertility value, your NSMV, your non-sexual marketplace value, and your EIV, economic intrinsic value. The last is of very relevance to men, so we put that aside. So men choose women based on, in a colloquial way, without the acronyms and the complications, we choose women based on beauty, youth, fertility, chastity, and attitude and character. That is what those three umbrellas cover. Very simple. So we want younger women, fertile women, attractive women, well-trained and groomed women. And therefore, the younger the woman is, the higher she would have each of all of those attributes. The older she gets, the less she would have. As women age, they have less of what men generally want. Younger men consolidate all of that into one word: sex. Older men consolidate that into something more than one word: sex, serenity, and servanthood. Two separate groups. So as a young man, you by beginning with the end in mind, you should be thinking like an old man. You want sex, you want serenity, you want servanthood. And therefore the question is, if you could describe the woman of your choice, both in beauty, in attractiveness, in youthfulness, in height, physical attributes, but also attitudinal attributes, behaviors, character-wise, traits, but also in terms of age. How would you describe that woman? Now let's assume the man in question is 18 years at the time when he is carrying out this process. And he says, well, I like a woman who on a scale of 0 to 10 is about a 9 in beauty. We say, fine. Again, this is your choice, your list. I like the woman to also be of a certain look. Perhaps she doesn't have to be Anglo-Saxon. She can be from anywhere, but maybe I would like her to have long hair, a brunette naturally, a certain height, a certain height to weight ratio, height to waist ratio. And he describes, remember this is his choice, he can describe whatever he wishes. He describes the physical attributes of this woman, so much so that the description is so gorgeous that even someone listening thinks she must be a great woman. Then he goes on to describe what he wants. In this particular instance, let's say he says, I like to be a father of 4. So I want a woman who can carry 4 children to term successfully. We put some parameters around that. We say, okay, well, if that's the case, then it means that the woman in question would have to have started the process perhaps in her early 20s, mid-20s, or late 20s. But irrespective, if you want 4 kids and you want the woman herself to nurture the kids until preschool years, say about 4, it would mean 4 kids, but depending on how you have the kids, if you have them back to back, you add another 4 years at the end of the last one, that gives you 8 years. If you allow for some space in between the 4, say 2 to 3 years, then that takes you to about 11, 12 years. So you have between 8 and 12 years. Childbirth, childbearing, and nurturing. We take the median, which is 10. She will be out of work for 10 years. So you want a very attractive woman, capable and youthful enough to bring to term 4 kids on your behalf, but one who will be out of the work environment for 10 years. That's a whole decade. This means you will be responsible for providing for the entire family of 6. This would imply that there's a level of income that you need to be earning. There's an amount of wealth that you should have already. There's a level of maturity that is necessary and needed on your part. We play a game, therefore. We simply say, well, where would you want to live? Now, it's a premature step, but I'll let you choose. And you say, well, I like to live in London, England. Great. We start the process then. You have described the woman you wish. You've described all of her attributes. her SMV, her RFV, and NSMV. In this case, character-wise, you want someone who is well-groomed, well-trained, domesticated, come from a good family, all of the good things. And then I say to you, fine, you have described a woman that looks great. What would she want of a man? Now, this is where it gets very interesting, because it's not just about you and your wishes. Your wishes have to, like a Venn diagram, there has to be an intersection between what you want and what she is, but also what she wants and what you are. And where there is an intersection, perhaps there's some level of understanding and harmony. That is what we're looking for. We're saying, the woman you've described, if we were to ask her a similar question, and if we were to assume that she would want similar things to you, such as she wants 4 kids and she wants to be at home with the kids, and therefore she'll be out of work for 10 years, you will find that what I described earlier, such as your ability to provide financially and protect the whole family, is the same to both people. So we begin with the first. Now, a man's role, responsibility comes under 4 P's: provision, protection, your priestly duties, and your ability to profess your love. Very simple. But provision begins with your ability to produce income, produce wealth. So we start. You want to be in London? Fine. How much would you need to, as a man, make from your, in this particular instance, a career you have that would afford you the ability to have 4 kids, live in London, and have all those responsibilities met? It's a simple process. Now, you might say, well, it all depends on where we live. Again, I come back to you and ask, where would you like to live? Would you like to live north of the River Thames or south of the River Thames? Would you like to live in central London or its neighbouring boroughs? Or would you like to live in perhaps the suburbs, perhaps Greater London? You get to choose. Would you like to live in a flat? Would you like to live in a house? If it's a house, is it a detached house, a semi-detached house, a terraced house, a cottage, bungalow? You get to decide. Now, what you find is when you've described all of these issues, or let's say preferences that the woman has, remember, you get to ask if she wants your hand in marriage. She gets to choose. Therefore, the burden of performance is on you, the man, to be the kind of person that she would agree to. Fascinating. So we ask another question. Assuming you were able to identify a number that you had to earn every single month in order for you to be able to provide for a family of 6, living in inner London, and able to meet all of the demands and needs of the children, what would you have to earn? Now, let's pretend, for example, that you said, this is a difficult question to answer. We take it a step back and we say, let's keep it simple. You're 18. At what age would you start to earn enough money and for you to feel that you're able to look after one person in addition to yourself? Now, you might say 27, but be careful, because 27 would mean that you've only been out of the job, the education sector, and working for roughly 4 years, which is not enough. You might say 34 or 35, fine. We then ask another question. If you were at that age, roughly what would you be earning? Now, you might say, well, probably about 65, 70,000 pounds. Fine. We ask a woman who is perhaps 7 years your junior, assuming you're 35 and she's 27, therefore she's only been working for about 4 years, what would she be earning? And you might say, well, maybe she might be making about 42, 45,000. We call it 40. We take your 65, we add it to her 40, is 105. For the sake of the conversation, let's just assume £100,000. That's what you need to earn to be able to cover your earning, but also replace her earnings to enable her then go into the childbearing process. So you have to be earning £100,000 gross. Perhaps the better example would have been to use the after-tax monthly salary or annual salary, but in any case, let's use 100,000. The next question would be, and remember, you are still 18 years at this point. We are beginning with the end in mind, after all. The next question would be, what professions would enable you such earning potential? Now, there are several, but what you will find, and here is perhaps a recommendation to you, that your likelihood of being in that top section of men who earn that much would depend on whether you've made the right choices career-wise. Now, you are 18, therefore you haven't decided what to study. But the more likelihood you lean towards the STEM field, science, engineering, technology, math, or lean towards the finance field, such as investment management, asset management, investment banking, management consultancy, or you lean towards any field of, let's say, accounting, but with specialties, or you choose the legal route. Now, in some cases, there are other professions, dentistry, etc. It's possible to identify the fields that earn such amounts today, but you have to then extrapolate. Remember, you're 18 and you're going roughly 18 years into the future. You have to extrapolate as to whether those fields would be able to afford the same salary today as you would expect them in the future. Therefore, it's not about identifying the fields in the present. It's about identifying the fields in the present and the likelihood that they would have the same earning ability in the future. So you make some adjustments. But let's just assume you have a safe bet with STEM. That would mean you've started with the end in mind and you've worked backwards. And the answer would be, you need to choose a profession, a career, that is STEM related. Now, my preference is never, if you can, choose any of the humanities or any of the, what I call the courses that are selected by the deans in universities just to ensure that some people get paid. You need to choose careers that would ensure that you get a return on your invested time and capital and even emotions. By beginning with the end in mind, you have told yourself, I have to study science, I have to study engineering, I have to study math, I have to study any form of profession that will guarantee a career, a progressive career. Boom, you started. You have 18 years to make yourself attractive so that when the time comes, at 35, you are able to put forward an offer to a woman who meets those requirements and have her say yes. Now, we've only talked about one aspect, which is provision. There are other aspects which have to do with your character. Anybody can provide. If you rob a bank, you have provision. If you defraud people, you have provision. If you do anything illegal, you can gain provision. You can go into entertainment and get provision. However, all provisions are not made equal. There are some that come with the blessing and the prosperity that you wish, and there are some that come with a curse that you loathe. So the question would be, you have to combine the ability to provide with the means and the method used to seek such opportunities. And that means you need good character. So if we went back to that woman and we said, you have two options, lady. There is a guy who is wealthy, but his wealth has come from ways that perhaps your kids will not be proud of. And there's another man, and he's wealthy, but his wealth has come out of integrity. He is respected by his peers. He is respected by the society. He is hardworking. He has the right attributes and attitude and aptitude to ensure that if he lost the funds, he can reproduce. He was well seasoned and groomed and taught. He learned under someone, therefore he's been an apprentice and he's paid his dues. Most women will choose an honest man over a shady man. Now, this simply means that in addition to working on getting into STEM, it's a multivariate process. You can't just focus on making money. You have to also focus on being the kind of person deserving of the woman. This would mean you have to be rounded, invest in yourself, learn, understand relationships, understand culture, understand history, understand society, understand money, so that you're a fully rounded person. Can you notice that at the core of both, you might say, pillars, one being economics and the other being your behavior and your character, there is one word that connects both of them. The word is study. You have to learn how to become great. You have to learn how to become successful. You have to learn how to be a good person. And then you have to implement what you've learned consistently over a long period of time so it becomes habitual, so that you are that person. You're not looking to become that person. You are that person. You're simply looking to become wealthy or prosperous. Now, this is a long explanation. The point being, men have to learn how to begin with the end in mind. Women, and I should say this, beauty costs. The question is, can you afford it? A man is always with the most attractive woman he can afford. But in addition to that, beauty, although it costs, is a depreciating commodity. It's a race to the bottom because the beautiful women and the beautiful people are not born yet. Every day there is a girl who turns 18 and is gorgeous. Beauty is a commodity that is produced every single day. What is not produced and what is in short supply is women of high caliber, high quality. This is where the non-sexual marketplace value comes into the picture. Women who've been raised properly, with the right attitude, with the right morals, with the right principles, with the right standards, sometimes in a traditional way, mostly in a way that she's able to work and cooperate and coexist with a man for the long term. That is rare. You can find beauty. It's harder to find women who are complete. If you can find women who have both, that is a dime a dozen. Rather, the inverse of a dime a dozen, what am I saying? It means that she doesn't exist. Her rarity is so unique that we call her the Proverbs 31 woman. You know, a woman who has all the grace and has all the beauty and has all the mannerisms and has all the esteem, but also esteemed by the peer and the community. She's a rare woman. The question should be, do you deserve such a woman? A woman's responsibility is to be attractive, giving. But a man plays a huge responsibility in recognizing that whilst the woman has a role to retain the man after he has chosen her, he has a responsibility to be the man that she actually thought he would be. You know, so many times we find men, we make promises that we never keep. We make promises that we break. We make promises just to get into the first stage, which is sex or hurt emotions. And then we renegade on our promises. So your responsibility as a man is to stay in the frame of the man that she thought she was getting and actually continue to exceed her expectations. That is only possible if you begin with the end in mind. So in closing today's session, if you can understand that concept, you begin with the end in mind, then you walk backwards to the present, you then identify the pathway to that goal, but you keep in mind, and this is perhaps something I'll talk about in the next session, you keep in mind all of the obstacles that will be in your way. Between where you are and your destination is what we call success. But also it's also what we call failure. You get to choose. If you can identify the end and begin, It is possible. If you can begin with the end in mind, come all the way back, but then identify the obstacle, it becomes plausible that you can achieve that dream. If you can begin with the end in mind, come back to the start, identify the obstacle, and design a pathway, a design, a plan, a strategy to avoid all the obstacles, then we say it is probable that you would achieve your dreams and goals. The next session, I will start to go into the obstacles that will be in your way that you should avoid. 95% of men fall short in reaching their goals. For some people, they fall short just before the end. Many a times the reason is simple. In many ways, they underestimated the power of the obstacles, and they overestimated their ego and their ability to withstand the temptations. You will find yourself tested. There will be several tests. I'll talk about this in the future sessions. And the tests will come. Sometimes it will be a test for your appetite, for your loins, for your ego, for your pride. But between where you are and the goal you wish and the success you want from a relationship, you will be tested. The only way you can survive is if you have humility, if you have the right people around you, if you continue to study, and if you remain focused and avoid all distractions. In other words, like Odysseus, you must have to, fill your ears with candle wax so that you don't hear the calls from all the distractions that could pull you away from your path to success. Now, I hope that's been useful.